The sun was setting over the dusty town of Redemption Creek, casting long shadows across the weathered boardwalks as Abigail Stevens clutched her swollen belly and fled down the main street, her wedding dress torn and mudded at the hem. Her fiancé's threats still echoed in her ears as tears streamed down her face, the promise of a new life crumbling before her very eyes. Wade O'Malley had just dismounted his horse outside the saloon when he spotted the distressed woman in white, stumbling as if the weight of the world pressed down upon her shoulders. The tall cowboy with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes didn't hesitate. He'd seen enough suffering in his 30 years to recognize genuine desperation. "Whoa there, miss," Wade called, reaching her just as she seemed about to collapse. His strong hands steadied her by the elbows. "You need help?" Abigail looked up at the stranger, her green eyes swimming with tears. "He'll take the child from me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He said he would take my baby." Wade's expression hardened, his jaw clenching beneath his trimmed beard. Without hesitation, he met her gaze with resolute determination. "Then I'll be the father instead." Colorado Territory, 1875. Redemption Creek had seen its fair share of troubles since the mining boom brought prospectors, merchants, and opportunists alike. Nestled in a valley with mountains rising majestically in the distance, the town had grown from a collection of tents to a proper settlement with a main street, church, and even a small schoolhouse. Abigail had come west as a mail-order bride, answering an advertisement from Harold Blackwell, a banker who described himself as a gentleman of means seeking a respectable wife. The reality had been far different. The moment she'd arrived after the grueling journey from Boston, she discovered Harold's true nature: controlling, cold, and calculating. Their wedding day had become her breaking point when he drunkenly revealed his plans to send their child away to boarding school the moment it was born. Now, as Wade O'Malley led her to the only doctor in town, Abigail couldn't stop trembling. "He'll come looking for me. He has influence here." "Doc Phillips is a good man," Wade reassured her, his voice low and steady. "He won't turn you away, and neither will I." The doctor's office was modest but clean, smelling of carbolic soap and medicinal herbs. Doc Phillips, a gray-haired man with spectacles perched on his nose, looked up from his desk as they entered. "Wade," he acknowledged with a nod before his eyes settled on Abigail. "What's happened here?" "She needs somewhere safe to stay, Doc. She's in a family way and running from trouble." The doctor gestured toward an examination table. "Sit down, miss. Let me make sure you and the little one are all right." As Doc Phillips examined her, Abigail explained her situation in halting words. The doctor's kind eyes showed no judgment, only concern. "The baby seems fine, but you're exhausted and showing signs of distress. You need rest, good food, and peace of mind." He turned to Wade. "I don't have room for her here, and the boarding house would be the first place Blackwell would look." Wade adjusted his hat. "She can come to my ranch. It's isolated enough, and my sister Emma lives there too. She'd welcome the company." Abigail's eyes widened. "I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition," Wade interrupted gently. "My place is about 10 miles out of town." "Blackwell wouldn't think to look there, and if he did, well," he patted the holstered revolver at his hip. "I know how to protect what's mine." "But I'm not yours," Abigail said softly. Wade's expression grew serious. "When I said I'd be the father, I meant it. Not just words to comfort a scared woman. I've seen what men like Blackwell do. I won't let that happen to you or your child." Doc Phillips cleared his throat. "Wade's a good man, miss, one of the best in these parts. If he's offering protection, you'd be wise to take it." Abigail looked from the doctor to Wade. She had no reason to trust this stranger, yet somehow she did. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was something in his steady gaze that spoke of honor and truth. "Thank you," she finally whispered. The journey to Wade's ranch took longer than usual. He rode slowly, mindful of Abigail's condition as she sat in front of him on his horse. The sun had long since set, and the stars blanketed the sky above them. Abigail had never seen so many stars in her life, having grown up in the city where gas lamps dimmed the night sky. "It's beautiful out here," she murmured, her head resting against Wade's chest. "That it is," he agreed, his deep voice rumbling. "First time I saw a night sky like this, I knew I could never go back to living in town. How long have you had your ranch? Going on 5 years now. Started with just a few acres and a dream. Now I've got 100 head of cattle, some good horses, and land as far as you can see in 3 directions." Pride colored his words. "It's not much compared to what some have, but it's mine, free and clear." As they crested a small hill, Abigail could make out the silhouette of a house and barn in the distance, a lantern glowing in one window. "Emma's still up," Wade observed. "She'll have supper waiting." The ranch house was modest but well built, with a wide porch wrapping around it and flowering bushes planted along its base. A woman emerged from the front door as they approached, her hands on her hips. "Wade O'Malley, do you have any idea what time it is?" "I was starting to worry." She stopped abruptly when she saw Abigail. "Oh," Wade dismounted first, then carefully helped Abigail down. "Emma, this is Miss Abigail Stevens. She needs our help." "Abigail, my sister Emma." Emma O'Malley was a few years younger than her brother, with the same warm brown eyes and determined set to her jaw. She took in Abigail's condition and ruined wedding dress with one quick glance, then nodded. "Any friend of Wade's is welcome here," she said simply, stepping forward to take Abigail's arm. "Come inside. You look like you could use some hot food and a proper rest." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly cozy, with handmade quilts on the furniture and curtains at the windows. A fire burned cheerfully in the stone hearth, and the smell of beef stew filled the air. "Sit down," Emma urged, guiding Abigail to a rocking chair near the fire. "I'll fix you a plate." While Emma bustled about in the kitchen area, Wade explained their situation in low tones. Abigail watched Emma's expression change from concern to outrage. "That vile man," she muttered, bringing Abigail a steaming bowl of stew and a chunk of fresh bread. "Well, he won't find you here. We O'Malleys stick together, and now that includes you." Abigail felt tears welling in her eyes again. "I don't know how to thank you both." "No need for thanks," Wade said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "Just eat and rest. Everything else can wait till morning." That night, Abigail slept in Emma's bed while Emma took a pallet on the floor. Despite her exhaustion, Abigail lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie night and wondering what the future held. For the first time since discovering she was with child, she felt a faint glimmer of hope. The following days fell into a pattern. Emma helped Abigail settle in, providing her with clothes and teaching her about life on the ranch. Wade was often out working with his cattle or tending to ranch business, but he made time each evening to check on Abigail, inquiring about her comfort and needs with genuine concern. A week after her arrival, Abigail was hanging laundry on the line when Wade approached, his hat in his hands. "I need to go into town for supplies," he said. "Thought you should know I'll be asking around about Blackwell, see what he's doing." Abigail's hands stilled on the wet shirt she was hanging. "Be careful, he's not a man to cross." Wade's expression hardened. "Neither am I. Besides, I'm just going to listen, not confront, but we need to know what we're facing." She nodded, understanding the wisdom in his approach. "Thank you, Wade, for everything." He shifted, looking almost uncomfortable with her gratitude. "It's what any decent man would do." "No," she said softly. "It's not. Most men would have passed by and never looked back." Something passed between them then, a moment of connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. Wade cleared his throat and put his hat back on. "I'll be back before sundown. Emma knows how to use a rifle if needed, but I don't expect trouble." After he left, Abigail continued with the laundry, her mind racing. She hadn't told Wade or Emma everything about Harold Blackwell, how his first wife had died under mysterious circumstances, how he'd threatened to have Abigail committed to an asylum if she didn't comply with his wishes, or how he'd struck her when she'd objected to his plans for their child. Emma joined her outside, carrying a basket of vegetables from the small garden behind the house. "Wade's gone to town?" Yes, he wants to find out what Harold is doing. Emma's expression grew serious. Wade can handle himself, but Blackwell's the type who doesn't fight his own battles. He'll hire guns if he's determined enough. I'm putting you both in danger, Abigail said, her voice breaking. Maybe I should leave, go somewhere far away where he can't find me. Emma set down her basket with a thump. Nonsense. Where would you go? How would you survive? No, you're staying right here where we can protect you and that baby. Her tone softened. Besides, I haven't seen my brother look at anyone the way he looks at you in a very long time. Abigail blushed. He's just being kind. Wade's always kind, but this is different. Emma picked up her basket again. Now, help me shell these peas for supper. When Wade returned that evening, his expression was grim. He waited until after they'd eaten before sharing his news. Blackwell's offering a reward for information about your whereabouts. He's telling people you're mentally unstable and ran off in a fit of madness. Wade's jaw clenched. He's got the sheriff in his pocket and a couple of hired guns staying at the hotel. Abigail's hand went protectively to her stomach. What do we do? For now, you stay here out of sight. I've spread word that I saw a woman matching your description heading north on the stage to Denver. With luck, that'll send them looking in the wrong direction. And if it doesn't, Wade met her eyes steadily. Then we face whatever comes. I meant what I said that first day, Abigail. I won't let him take your child. That night, lying in Emma's bed, Abigail felt the baby move within her. She placed a hand over the spot, whispering promises of protection and love. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future one where she and her child were safe, where perhaps they could build a life here on this peaceful ranch with the kind-hearted siblings who had taken her in. The following morning, Abigail woke to the sound of raised voices. She dressed quickly and made her way to the main room where Wade and Emma were in the midst of a heated discussion. Can't just marry her, Wade. You barely know her, Emma was saying. It's the only way to ensure her safety and the child's. If she's my wife, Blackwell has no legal claim. There are other ways, name one that's as certain. Emma fell silent, then noticed Abigail standing in the doorway. Abigail, we were just discussing my future, Abigail finished for her. I heard. Wade turned to face her, his expression earnest. Abigail, I know this is sudden, but marriage would give you and your child protection under the law. I wouldn't expect. That is, it could be in name only if you prefer. Abigail looked at this man who had already done so much for her. You would do that? Marry a woman carrying another man's child? I would, he said simply. But what about love? What about your chance to find someone you truly want to spend your life with? Wade's gaze never wavered. I believe we could build something good together, Abigail. I respect you, and I care about what happens to you. Where I come from, that's a solid foundation, Emma sighed. I'll make some coffee. You two clearly have things to discuss. Once they were alone, Abigail sank into a chair, her mind whirling. Wade, I'm grateful beyond words for all you've done, but marriage. I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said, sitting across from her. Just think about it. Judge Wilson comes through town once a month to handle legal matters. He'll be here in 3 days. He's a fair man who won't be swayed by Blackwell's money. Abigail nodded slowly. I'll think about it. For the next 2 days, Abigail contemplated Wade's proposal. She watched him as he worked around the ranch, gentle with the animals, patient with the young ranch hand he employed, respectful toward his sister. He was a good man, perhaps the best she'd ever known. On the evening of the second day, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Abigail made her decision. Yes, she said quietly. Wade turned to her, a question in his eyes. Yes, I'll marry you, she clarified. For the baby's sake and perhaps for ours as well. The smile that spread across Wade's face reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. I'll do right by you, Abigail. That's a promise? I believe you, she said, and was surprised to find that she truly did. The next morning, Emma helped Abigail prepare for the simple ceremony. They had no fancy clothes or elaborate preparations, but Emma found a blue dress that had belonged to their mother and adjusted it to fit Abigail's pregnant form. "You look beautiful," Emma said, arranging Abigail's hair. "Wade won't know what hit him." "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Abigail asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Emma squeezed her shoulders. "I think my brother is the finest man I know, and I think you deserve someone who will treat you with respect and kindness. The rest will come in time." Judge Wilson arrived shortly before noon, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a dignified bearing. He greeted Wade warmly and nodded politely to Abigail. "Wade tells me you're in need of a quick ceremony," he said, his keen eyes assessing her. "He also mentioned your situation." Abigail tensed, but the judge surprised her with a kind smile. "I've known Wade O'Malley since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. If he's chosen to stand by you, that's good enough for me." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Standing in the ranch house living room with Emma and the young ranch hand, Timothy, as witnesses, Wade and Abigail exchanged vows. Wade's voice was steady as he promised to protect and cherish her, and Abigail found herself blinking back tears as she pledged her loyalty and respect in return. When Judge Wilson pronounced them husband and wife, Wade gently took her hand and slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his mother's ring. Emma had told her earlier. "With this ring I thee wed," he said softly, and then, to Abigail's surprise, he leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. It was their first kiss, brief and chaste, but something stirred within Abigail's heart at the touch of his lips on hers. After the judge departed, Emma served a special dinner to celebrate. The atmosphere was light, with Emma teasing her brother and Wade laughing more freely than Abigail had ever seen. It felt almost like a real family. That night, as they prepared for bed, the reality of their new situation became suddenly awkward. "I'll sleep in the barn," Wade offered, his usual confidence faltering. "You take the bedroom." "Wade, this is your home. I can't put you out of your own bed." "It's our home now," he corrected gently. "And you're carrying a child, you need proper rest." Abigail hesitated, then suggested, "Perhaps we could share, just to sleep, I mean. The bed is large enough." Wade's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "If you're comfortable with that." That first night they lay side by side, a respectful distance between them, both acutely aware of the other's presence. But as the days passed, the awkwardness gradually faded. They developed a routine, learning each other's habits and preferences. Wade was always careful not to press for more than Abigail was ready to give, but sometimes, in quiet moments, she would catch him looking at her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. 3 weeks after their wedding, disaster struck. Wade was in town purchasing supplies when he heard the news Harold Blackwell had learned of Abigail's whereabouts and was on his way to the ranch with the sheriff and his hired guns. Wade immediately purchased ammunition for his rifle and revolver, then mounted his horse and rode hard for home, pushing the animal to its limits. He arrived to find Emma on the porch, rifle in hand, with Abigail nowhere in sight. "Where is she?" Wade demanded, dismounting in a cloud of dust. "Hidden in the root cellar," Emma replied grimly. "Blackwell and his men are coming. Timothy spotted them about a mile out and rode back to warn us." Wade checked his weapons. "How many?" "Blackwell, the sheriff, and 2 gunmen." Wade's jaw tightened. "Get inside, bar the door." "Only open it for me or Abigail." "Wade, do it, Emma, please." His sister reluctantly complied, leaving Wade alone on the porch to face the approaching riders. He could see them now, 4 men on horseback approaching at a steady pace. Wade stood his ground, his hand resting near his holster. As they drew closer, he recognized Harold Blackwell, a portly man with expensive clothes and cold eyes. The sheriff rode beside him, looking uncomfortable, while the 2 hired guns flanked them, their expressions watchful and predatory. "O'Malley," Blackwell called as they stopped a short distance from the house. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you, Blackwell," Wade replied evenly. "This is my property and everyone on it is under my protection." Blackwell's face flushed with anger. "The woman is my wife." She ran from our wedding, confused and hysterical. She needs medical attention." "That's not how I heard it," Wade countered. "And she's not your wife. She's mine, legally married with proper documentation filed with Judge Wilson himself." This news seemed to take Blackwell by surprise. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "That's impossible," Blackwell sputtered. "She was promised to me. We had a contract she never signed from what I understand. And even if she had, it would be void now. Abigail O'Malley is my lawfully wedded wife." One of the hired guns moved his hand toward his weapon, but Wade was quicker. His revolver appeared in his hand as if by magic, aimed steady and true. "I wouldn't," he warned quietly. "Not unless you're prepared to die today." The gunman froze, recognizing the look of a man who meant business. The sheriff raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Now hold on, everyone. Let's not have any bloodshed. Wade, is what you're saying true? You and the girl are legally married?" "Yes, Sheriff." "Judge Wilson performed the ceremony 3 weeks ago. The paperwork is inside if you'd like to see it." The sheriff turned to Blackwell. "If that's the case, Mr. Blackwell, there's nothing I can do. The law recognizes her marriage to O'Malley." Blackwell's face contorted with rage. "The child is mine. I demand my rights as the father." Wade's expression hardened. "That child will be raised as my own. Any man who threatens my family will answer to me." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "And I promise you, Blackwell, you wouldn't be the first man I've put in the ground." Something in Wade's eyes must have convinced Blackwell of his sincerity, for the banker's bluster suddenly deflated. "This isn't over, O'Malley," he said, but the threat sounded hollow. "Yes, it is," Wade replied. "Ride away now and don't come back. Next time I won't be so hospitable." The sheriff, clearly relieved to avoid conflict, was quick to turn his horse. "Come on, Blackwell, nothing more to be done here." After a moment of tense silence, Blackwell and his hired guns followed the sheriff, turning their horses back toward town. Wade kept his revolver drawn until they were well out of sight, then holstered it with a sigh of relief. The door to the house opened and Emma emerged. "They're gone." "For now," Wade confirmed. "Where's Abigail?" "Still in the root cellar. I'll get her." Moments later, Abigail appeared, pale but composed. "I heard voices. Was it Harold?" Wade nodded, taking her hands in his. "He's gone, and he won't be back if he knows what's good for him. I made it clear you're my wife now, and the baby will be raised as my child." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. "You faced him down for us." "And I'd do it again," Wade said simply. "Your family now, Abigail, both of you." That night, as they prepared for bed, something had changed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained seemed to have diminished. When Wade climbed into bed beside her, Abigail moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. Wade's arm came around her, holding her gently. "No need for thanks. I meant every word I said to Blackwell. You and the baby are my family now." Abigail lifted her head to look at him in the dim light. "I'm beginning to think I'm the luckiest woman alive to have found you." Wade's eyes softened. "I'm the lucky one." When their lips met this time, it wasn't the brief, chaste kiss of their wedding day. It was something deeper, a meeting of souls who had found each other against all odds. Abigail's arms went around Wade's neck, drawing him closer, and he responded with gentle passion, mindful of her condition but unable to hide his growing feelings. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. Though they still didn't share the full intimacy of marriage out of respect for Abigail's pregnancy, they grew closer in other ways. Wade would hold her at night, his hand sometimes resting protectively over her growing belly. They talked for hours about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Abigail learned about Wade's time fighting in the war, about the family he'd lost to fever before coming west, about his determination to build something lasting on this land. In turn, she shared stories of her life in Boston, of the father who had gambled away their family fortune, forcing her to seek a new life as a mail-order bride. She confessed her initial fear of Wade, which had given way to respect, then admiration, and now something that felt remarkably like love. As summer turned to fall, Abigail's time grew near. The baby was active now, kicking and shifting within her. Wade had taken to speaking to her belly in the evenings, telling the unborn child stories about the ranch and the animals. "You'll be riding almost as soon as you can walk," he promised one night, his hand splayed across Abigail's stomach. "And I'll teach you everything I know about cattle and horses." "What if it's a girl?" Abigail teased. Wade looked up at her, his expression serious. "Then she'll be the best horsewoman in the territory, and any boy who wants to court her will have to get past me first." Abigail laughed, running her fingers through Wade's hair. "You're going to be a wonderful father." Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or fear. "I hope so." "I never thought I'd have the chance." "Why not? Surely there were women who would have been happy to marry you before I came along." Wade was quiet for a moment. "There was someone once. Mary was her name. We were to be married, but she took sick with the same fever that claimed my parents. After that, I figured maybe I wasn't meant for family life." Abigail's heart ached for his loss. "I'm sorry, Wade." "Don't be," he said, kissing her hand. "If things had gone differently, I wouldn't be here with you now." The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick, making them both laugh. "Someone wants attention," Abigail said, wincing slightly. Wade leaned down to speak to her belly again. "Patience, little one, you'll be here soon enough." As it happened, soon enough came in the middle of a howling blizzard 2 weeks later. Abigail woke in the night with sharp pains radiating across her abdomen. She tried to breathe through them, not wanting to wake Wade, but when her water broke, she couldn't suppress a gasp of surprise. Wade was instantly alert. "Abigail, what is it?" "The baby," she managed between clenched teeth. "It's coming." Wade sprang into action, lighting lamps and stoking the fire before waking Emma. The wind howled outside, snow piling against the windows and doors. "No chance of getting Doc Phillips in this," Emma said grimly, assessing the situation. "But I've helped deliver babies before. We'll manage." The labor was long and difficult. Abigail cried out in pain as contractions racked her body, squeezing Wade's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. He never complained, never left her side, wiping her brow with cool cloths and murmuring encouragement. "You're the strongest woman I know," he told her as dawn broke, the storm still raging outside. "You can do this, Abigail, I believe in you." Finally, as morning light filtered through the snow-crusted windows, Emma announced, "I can see the head." "One more big push, Abigail." With a cry that seemed torn from the depths of her soul, Abigail gave one final push. The room filled with a new sound, the indignant wail of a newborn taking its first breath. "It's a girl," Emma exclaimed, quickly wrapping the tiny, red-faced infant in a clean blanket. "A beautiful, healthy girl." She placed the baby in Abigail's trembling arms. Tears streamed down Abigail's face as she looked at her daughter for the first time, a perfect little being with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in protest at being removed from her warm, familiar home. "She's perfect," Abigail whispered. Wade leaned over them, his own eyes suspiciously bright. When he reached out a tentative finger to touch the baby's cheek, her tiny hand closed around it with surprising strength. "Look at that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She knows her pa already." Abigail looked up at him, her heart so full it might burst. "Wade." He met her gaze, and in that moment everything between them was clear and true. "I love you, Abigail O'Malley. You and this little girl are everything to me." "I love you too," she replied, the words coming easily now that they'd finally been spoken. "We both do." Emma cleared her throat, wiping away her own tears. "What will you name her?" Abigail and Wade exchanged a look. They hadn't discussed names, the subject somehow too intimate during the careful development of their relationship. "Hope," Abigail said finally. "Her name is Hope, because that's what she represents for all of us." "Hope O'Malley," Wade repeated, his finger still captured in his daughter's grip. "It's perfect." The blizzard raged for 2 more days, isolating them in their snug ranch house. They were a family in every sense now. Wade, Abigail, baby Hope, and Emma, who doted on her new niece with unbridled enthusiasm. When the storm finally broke, Wade rode into town to share the news and check on their neighbors. He returned with supplies, mail that had accumulated during the storm, and a grim expression. "What is it?" Abigail asked, nursing Hope by the fire. "Is everyone all right in town?" Wade removed his snow-covered coat and hat before answering. "Blackwell's dead," Abigail gasped. "What? How?" "Apparently he got drunk at the saloon the night of the storm, started a fight with one of his hired guns over payment. The gun went off during the struggle." Wade shook his head. "No great loss to the community from what I gather. He'd been making enemies left and right since you left him." Abigail looked down at her daughter, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. She couldn't pretend to mourn Harold Blackwell, but death was always sobering. "So it's truly over," she said quietly. "He can never threaten us again." Wade knelt beside her chair, gently touching Hope's downy head. "It was over the moment you became my wife, Abigail. I would never have let him harm either of you." She leaned forward to kiss him, a gesture that had become natural and cherished. "I know. You're a man of your word, Wade O'Malley." That spring, as new life blossomed across the prairie, Wade and Abigail stood on their porch watching the sunset, baby Hope sleeping soundly in her mother's arms. The ranch was thriving. Wade's cattle herd had grown, and he'd added a flock of sheep at Abigail's suggestion. Emma had recently announced her engagement to the town's new schoolteacher, planning a June wedding. "I never thought I could be this happy," Abigail said, leaning against her husband's solid frame. Wade's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Nor I. When I saw you that day in your torn wedding dress, I just wanted to help. I never imagined we'd build this life together. Do you ever regret it?" "Taking on another man's child?" Wade looked down at Hope, his expression tender. "She's not another man's child. She's yours, she's mine, she's ours. I've loved her from the moment you told me about her, and I'll love her all my days." He kissed Abigail's forehead. "Just as I'll love you." Abigail turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. "I think I started falling in love with you that very first day when you said you'd be the father. You gave me hope when I had none. And you gave me a family when I thought that chance was lost to me." Wade lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. As twilight deepened around them, they remained on the porch, watching the first stars appear in the vast prairie sky. Hope stirred in Abigail's arms, making small, contented sounds before settling back to sleep. "She belongs here," Wade murmured. "Just like you do." "We all do," Abigail corrected softly. "This is our home, our life." And it was a good life built on courage, sacrifice, and a love that had grown from the seeds of kindness and respect into something enduring and true. As darkness fell completely, they went inside together, a family forged not by blood but by choice, by promise, and by love that had overcome every obstacle placed in its path. 5 years later, the sound of childish laughter echoed across the ranch yard as Hope, now a spirited 5-year-old with her mother's green eyes and her father's determined nature, chased after a butterfly. Her younger brother, James, toddled after her on chubby legs, his face alight with the joy of simply being alive. Abigail watched from the garden where she was harvesting vegetables, her heart full. Wade rode in from checking the herd, dismounting with the easy grace that still made her breath catch. Their eyes met across the yard, and his smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Pa," Hope cried, abandoning her butterfly chase to run to Wade. "Did you see any wolves today?" Wade scooped her up, twirling her in the air before setting her on his shoulders. "No wolves today, but I did see a family of deer by the creek." "Can we go see them, please?" Hope begged, her hands clasped in her father's hair. "Maybe tomorrow, if they're still around," Wade promised, bending to ruffle James's dark curls as the boy reached them. "How's my little cowhand today?" James grinned up at his father, babbling happily in his 2-year-old language that only occasionally included recognizable words. Wade made his way to Abigail, leaning down to kiss her as she straightened from her gardening. "And how's my beautiful wife?" "Happy," she replied simply. "So very happy." It was true. The past 5 years had brought challenges: drought, a difficult birth when James came along, the loss of Wade's sister Emma to a fever that swept through the county, but through it all, their love had only deepened. Hope had grown into a confident, kind-hearted child who had Wade wrapped around her little finger. She had no idea that he wasn't her biological father, and it didn't matter. In every way that counted, Wade was her pa, the man who taught her to ride her pony, who read her stories at bedtime, who dried her tears when she fell and cheered her triumphs when she succeeded. That night, after the children were asleep, Wade and Abigail sat on their porch swing, watching the stars emerge. His arm was around her shoulders, her head resting against him in the comfortable intimacy of long-established love. "I got a letter from Judge Wilson today," Wade said. "He's retiring, moving to Denver to live with his daughter. He's been a good friend to us," Abigail mused. "I'll never forget how he stood up for us against Harold's lawyers after his death, making sure Hope's inheritance was secure." The judge had indeed been instrumental in navigating the legal complexities after Blackwell's death. Though Abigail wanted nothing from her former fiancé, Judge Wilson had insisted that Hope had rights to a portion of Blackwell's estate. The money was now held in trust for her education. "Remember our wedding day?" Wade asked, his fingers playing with a strand of Abigail's hair that had escaped its pins. "Of course, I was so nervous, so uncertain." She turned to look at him. "But something in me knew it was right, knew you were right." "I fell in love with you that first day," Wade confessed. "When you looked up at me with those fearful green eyes and told me about your baby, I knew then I'd do anything to protect you both." Abigail's heart swelled with gratitude and love. "You've given us so much, Wade, a home, a family. Your name, your heart. You've given me just as much," he countered, pulling her closer. "More than I ever dreamed possible." The night air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scents of sage and prairie grass. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonely cry answered by another not alone after all. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that day?" Abigail asked softly. Wade was quiet for a moment before answering. "I try not to think about it. Some things are meant to be, Abigail. Some people are meant to find each other." She nodded against his shoulder. "I believe that too, and I believe that Hope was meant to be your daughter just as much as James was meant to be our son." "They're both our miracles," Wade agreed, "along with their mother." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars multiplied overhead. Their life wasn't perfect, ranch life never was, with its constant demands and challenges, but it was rich and full and meaningful. "I love you, Wade O'Malley," Abigail said simply. "More today than yesterday, and not as much as tomorrow." Wade turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "And I love you, Abigail O'Malley, for all my days and beyond." Their kiss was tender, a reaffirmation of vows spoken and unspoken. When they finally went inside, hand in hand, they left behind the porch swing still gently rocking, like the steady rhythm of their hearts beating in tandem, two souls who had found each other against all odds, building a love strong enough to weather any storm. Inside, they checked on their sleeping children, Hope with her doll clutched tightly, James with his thumb in his mouth, before retiring to their own room. As they had every night for 5 years, they lay in each other's arms, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together on that fateful day. "Good night, my love," Wade whispered. "Good night," Abigail responded, closing her eyes with the certainty that when morning came, they would face it together just as they would all the mornings to follow for the rest of their days. And as they drifted to sleep, somewhere in the vast expanse of the universe, it seemed that the stars shone just a little brighter over the O'Malley ranch, as if in blessing of the family that had found its way home.